Welcome to Retailistic, the official podcast of Coresight Research for April 7th, 2026. This week, our CEO, Deborah Weinswig, welcomes Danny Kirk, founder of ReddiReach, an agency that helps brands and e-commerce businesses develop and deploy their Reddit strategy. But before Deborah and Danny tell us how to use Reddit to improve your Gen AI search results, here's a quick preview of some of the research publishing on Coresight.com this week. We're doing a deep dive on the implications of the Middle East conflict for retail, calling on the context of the early weeks of the Ukraine invasion. Our series on supply chain innovations kicks off with soft lines. We're publishing a wrap-up of the learnings from Shop Talk Spring, and we have two different reports on agentic AI, a CEO strategy brief, and a full playbook with the nuts and bolts of how to fully leverage agentic AI in your business. Visit Coresight.com to check out our full catalog of over 7,000 reports, webinars, and datasets. Now, here's Deborah and Danny.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Retailistic. We are very excited to have Danny Kirk on the phone. Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Deborah.
So, Danny, I was just sharing with you as we were doing our prep about how I originally was introduced to Reddit as a channel that's different from what we might think. But can you tell us, how did you get to where you are with thinking about Reddit? And how do you think it's going to change in, let's say, the next 6 or 12 months? Because that's the question we're getting asked a lot.
I think Reddit has quite the hero's journey. For about 2 decades now, they've been unprofitable. And honestly, I think they were probably not going to survive. And in the past 2 years, with AI using them as their highest cited source, they now suddenly have an incredible business model sharing human data with the LLMs in order to fulfill citations for what people are asking for. So that's huge there. It is becoming more mainstream. I still think it's a pretty obscure corner of the internet, but more and more people are hearing about it for a few different reasons. Obviously, Reddit users like myself have always used it as a trustful source. People are seeing it on page 1 of Google now as well. So even if you're not a Reddit user, but you're still looking for 10 blue links, the top 3 might actually be Reddit links. And then finally, we all know that consumer buying trends are shifting toward your trusty AI assistant, and 20% of all those citations are from Reddit. So it's incredible times. What's going to happen in the next 12 months? We've already started seeing it happen. They're tightening up things on the platform. Reddit's incentive is to provide human data to the LLMs, and the LLMs have an incentive to buy human data from Reddit. So what do they want on the platforms? They don't want bots. They don't want, fake accounts. They want humans and human data. So we're already seeing a tightening up on that, and I think it's a good thing.
I mean, that says a lot about Reddit as a company, because in many cases, right, you start to get big, and we've seen it from a research perspective. Maybe you kind of chase the evergreen dollar versus maybe what's at the core of your company. What do you think is driving them, and what is it, as somebody who's followed them for a long time, what do you think that says about not only the company, but their opportunities for growth?
Yeah, what drives them? I do think that all of us Reddit users, and probably corporate as well, do find it a beautiful corner of the internet, no matter how obscure it is. We all have these weird subreddits that we're a part of, and you have friends on there that you may never meet in person that you interact with. It's kind of an incredible thing, and it's still a pretty public forum. There's a reason why the LLMs are scraping it. You don't need a login to go scrape that platform. It's not like LinkedIn where you can't see anything, or other platforms. So I think that they really do want to keep it still human. They want to keep it quality. They do want to scale up. You can see them pushing advertisements a lot more. But I think they're still excited to keep it quirky and keep it passionate.
You mentioned, I think it was interesting, LinkedIn, which to me, I really used to use it a lot for, what's on the top of people's minds? Where are people going that maybe I wasn't aware of? And now I feel like it's just people going to any one of a number of LLMs, right? Like, what are the top 10 things somebody should do to show up on LinkedIn? Or what do I use Claude versus Grok versus blah, blah, blah for? I feel like it's turned into something that maybe if we compare LinkedIn to Reddit, right, Reddit has really kind of stayed true to their cause and LinkedIn has maybe drifted a bit.
Yeah, LinkedIn, and I use it every single day. It's a marketing channel for us, and I really do love it. But it's incredibly algorithmic. It's 1% of people are publishing all the content, and all of them are doing the exact same thing. So it's pretty programmatic and algorithmic, in my opinion. And then Reddit. I mean, LinkedIn is governed all by the same rules as a whole. Reddit has subreddits, and subreddits are little nation states. You have your queens and kings of these nation states, and they make whatever rules they want to. Some have literally no rules whatsoever, and some have incredibly strict rules. So it's in that way, the two are entirely different because LinkedIn is kind of top down. Everything is exactly the same. So of course it's very programmatic, but Reddit is just kind of like the wild, wild west. And you can really find those passionate people in there because they do have their little nation. Yeah.
And so the difference is they feel like their subreddit is really not only in some cases could be a mirror, but also pushing them to maybe question some of their beliefs, et cetera, that brought them into that subreddit originally. Can you talk a little bit more for those? I mean, I have my own subreddits that, once again, found during the pandemic when, you're looking for, because this is before LLMs, you're looking for research, you're looking for more, you're trying to find a variety of thought on a topic. Can you talk a little bit more about how these subreddits are managed? And then, how do kind of advertisers and e-commerce brands think about the quality of the data and how to access it?
Yeah, so each subreddit usually has a small handful of moderators, maybe like 1 to 5, just depending on their size, really. And Reddit actually rolled out some new rules on this last week, I believe. They're limiting the power of moderators because they're now realizing maybe 2 people hold the keys to a 10 million person kingdom and maybe have a little bit too much power. So that was last week that they kind of redid some of the rules on moderators. But yeah, within that, they're able to define the topics, kind of the ethos, the ground rules. Usually they have anywhere from 1 to 10 ground rules in there. And because of those, who they attract to them. Sometimes there are multiple subreddits that have the exact same content, but the different rules and ethos means they attract different people in there. So that's kind of the cool part. There's not just one place that you could be hanging out. And then for the brands and e-commerce and whatnot that want to leverage that, of course, you can do it both organically and paid. Reddit ads are relatively inexpensive relative to other types of advertising platforms. Now, of course, the whole platform is pseudonymous, so you don't have people's name and whatnot, but you do have affinity information. People are organizing themselves based on the things they like. So that's a good thing. And then on the organic side of things, you also have everyone organizing themselves into their topic. So if you're into ultra running, if you're into ultra running too, and you're looking for a new shoe, you go into that group. You don't go into the marathon runners group. That's totally different. You go into the ultra runners group and see what people are talking about, trail shoes versus, kind of more flats and whatnot. So it's a great place in that way.
So you do like centuries?
I am signed up for my first 100 mile later this year. So yeah, wish me luck.
No, I was a big runner in my day. I'm more of a cyclist now. And I had a friend of mine. I would usually do the last marathon with her. So like the last 26. So I would sleep
Cool.
literally out wherever we were. And it was just, I mean, hey, once again, I was only a quarter of a part of it, but I learned so much. I know we're totally off topic at this point, but I learned so much from being with those, I mean, really these heroes, in my opinion, from kind of how they were able to train. And honestly, once you're out there, it's all mental, right? It's not
Yeah.
physical because I would see people who were, at the start, I'm like, oh, they're, and it really was just a mental game at the end. And so if I think about it, bringing it actually back to Reddit, is that, when you can find people who are similar to yourself, especially with a sport like that, I mean, that's just a whole different game. And you may be able to get one piece of wisdom that literally gets you over the finish line.
Absolutely. And also just from people that understand what you're going through. I had trained for a certification a few years back and I joined a certain subreddit just for that. And it was the most helpful people on planet Earth. And I will never meet any of them in person probably, but just, they're all organized on that thing they're excited about. And that's an incredibly cool thing versus like taking it back to LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, but I mean, there are groups on LinkedIn, no, but I don't think anybody really uses those. But on Reddit, the entirety of it is organized into those groups.
I always, when I meet someone new, right, and you go to connect, I'm interested to see what groups we have in common. But beyond that, I always had, once again, as a research organization, I had great hopes, right? We could set things up by topic or by interest, but it never really, obviously that's just not how LinkedIn kind of rings a cash register. So going back to how Reddit thinks about this, can you take us back in time? Because as I had mentioned earlier, I became familiar with the platform, let's just say at the tail end of the, no pun intended, tail end of the pandemic. I was on this SPAC that bought Wag, the dog walking company, and Garrett, who's the CEO, talked all about how, right, like how inexpensive the cost per clicks were. And I was like, people advertise on Reddit, right? Because it maybe is so subtle on how they do it. I'm like, I'd spent a lot of time on there once again during the pandemic, but I never even noticed. And he was like, it has been our, not only kind of our most loyal customers, but he said, right, like he was almost like an evangelist for them. And I've never met, I mean, very few people who evangelize for the platforms or the, that they're paying to use.
Absolutely. And, dog and pet owners, that's a huge, huge portion of Reddit. They've got a bunch of fans on there. Yeah, for the brands that are willing to kind of take the dive, and yet again, I think that 95% of brands, A, have never even heard of Reddit, or B, too scared to even touch it. For the ones that do, it's an incredibly powerful time. I liken it back to, everyone that wishes they started SEO 25 years ago and got the snowball going. Kind of those brands that are doing that today on Reddit, I think are incredible, whether it's with paid advertising, a branded strategy, having their own branded account and their own subreddit where they can be the king or queen of the castle, and even non-branded strategies, getting their super users, super customers that are also super users of Reddit to go tell their story on the platform. The ones that are pulling all those three levers at once, they're going to find customers on Reddit. They're going to be seen in Google on page one, and they're going to get citations from LLMs. It's an incredible time in the industry.
So going back to where we at Coresight spent a lot of time is on companies' AI strategies. Why have the LLMs kind of leaned even heavier into Reddit? What was the genesis of that?
I don't own an LLM company, so I'll only speculate here, but yeah, so that's why we're here. I would imagine, just looking at like the opportunity of other places, what other platforms have really good information? It's usually social media platforms. Of course, they also cite Quora and Wikipedia, but those are kind of more for historical information versus trending information. So where do you get your trending information from? Active social media platforms. Most social media platforms are gated. If you don't have an account, you can't get in. Twitter is or X is a really great one for real-time information, but I'm pretty sure that is proprietary to Grok at this point. So I do think Reddit was the absolute obvious choice for these LLMs because they were agnostic to who's using their information as long as they're paying. And they were also looking for paying customers as well.
Well, that's interesting. And, we are hearing more and more about, this continuous shift or ask for help around moving from SEO to GEO and AEO. How do you see Reddit continue to play a role there and look out beyond the valley, if you will?
So back in September, Reddit made up an insane percentage of citations. It was, at some points, it was 80% of all citations, which we can all agree was way, way, way too high for any platform to be 80% of citations. Now it's roughly 20% as a broad generalization. Sometimes it's much lower, sometimes it's a little higher, depending on the brand. If I had to look out another 12 months, I imagine that settles down maybe around 10%, maybe even a little lower. I imagine LLMs are always looking for more data, not only more data from the platforms they already source on, but more data from everywhere. So I imagine it settles out a little bit more. Now, does that make it any less powerful? I don't think so. It's just that something we have to be honest about, that it probably, the only thing we know will change in the future is that things will change,
So when a brand says, right, they've heard you and they're like, oh, we have to be on Reddit, what's the first thing you tell them to do? And what's the first mistake you tell them to avoid?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing, Reddit is a bunch of skeptical people, skeptical user base. As a generalization, I would say to understand the subreddits, like don't do any marketing. Spend 1 to 3 months and just go in, find your tribes on there, find the subreddits they're in, understand how people act, what they post, how they comment, what they talk about, what rules there are, truly understand those and appreciate those. Start dipping your toes in, just be a general contributor to the community. If that's just from your own kind of personal founder account or from a branded account or from a non-branded account, start just providing helpful information. Do not market whatsoever. Just kind of chime in, see what works, see what doesn't work, and kind of take it from there. It's definitely a platform to dip the toes into. It's very much a long game, but I don't know about you, but I'm a fan of long tail games.
Absolutely. Who do you see is typically the person in the organization who's kind of owning, if you will, the Reddit relationship?
Yeah, assuming this is a big organization, which most of the clients we serve are, it's a social media person. And I always tell them, a lot of clients try to give us their keys to their account. And I'm like, no, no, no. Reddit gets really paranoid when you switch logins and stuff, or, when screen sizes change and IP addresses change. That's a quick way to get shadow banned. So I'm like, have this done in-house for your branded account. Social media person, they're managing all your other accounts. This shouldn't be a big deal, but have them own that process, have them make a daily practice of it that doesn't take up a huge amount of their time, and just let them go from there.
And as Reddit is continuing to be very important for the LLMs, do you see this ever moving into, right? We have some clients who have like an office of AI or chief AI officer. How do you see this evolving in terms of ownership if you do?
I imagine that for the brands that take it seriously, it'll probably end up taking more of their time. And that's also with the assumption that one of my big bets, and it's already coming to fruition, is they're cracking down on automations and bots on the platform. So assuming you can't use automations and bots, it will probably continue to take up more of your team's time. So I imagine, yeah, it might not just be one social media person. You have your ads buying person, you have your macro strategy, just on any big social media platform, you have probably a team at some point handling all this.
And as you see them cracking down on automation and bots, are you seeing any kind of change in the content, or it's just continuing to be genuine?
It is, well, I think the non-genuine content is getting filtered out as it should be. The best actors are having their best day ever because they're being good actors on the platform and being genuine. So yeah, I love it in that way. I'm sure it always throws a wrench into things because, they always kind of overshoot with tightness and then kind of rein it back in a little bit. But yeah, I think the good actors on the platform are just going to have their best year ever.
And as I hear you speak, what I think is very interesting is about how the brand themselves plays a role in Reddit. Do you think that those brands, and I'm taking a bit of a leap here, that lean heavier into it, do you think they ultimately end up discovering more of where they kind of sit in the ecosystem or where they have permission to sit in the ecosystem?
Absolutely. Reddit is an incredible place to get customer feedback from. I mean, people are literally talking about your topic, and that's a great reason to just hang out for 3 months in there. Don't market, don't do anything, just listen. And, maybe you can use some tools to help you listen because you're not really engaging and you can compile that with AI and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely. Those best brands aren't just marketing on the platform. They're listening, gathering feedback, hearing what people have to say, and then making their product or service better.
And because I feel like you are quite early in the Reddit journey, what kind of brought you here?
Yeah, our agency is about a decade old now. We've done a little different marketing in the past, but I've been a longtime Reddit user myself and seen the power of it. And you could always get customers just from users itself, but now it's a three-in-one channel with Google sharing the links and then AI citing it. So then once we kind of saw it heading in that direction, it became very obvious to roll it out and really lean into that.
And what were you doing before that?
Yeah, we were doing some kind of email marketing. I had a SaaS company that we grew and sold about 15 years ago. So a lot of lessons learned in there. Took those onto this agency, help other people avoid the pitfalls that I made at that company.
I mean, that's like my whole life, right? It's like, we experience this, so you don't have to, right? I mean, that I think is always really helpful. And as I think about it, e-commerce brands, early days, because well, let's look at kind of unified commerce, or I really don't like the word omnichannel, never have, but if you have a retailer who has both a physical and let's say .com presence, a lot of the .com cost traditionally and continue to be allocated towards the physical. And so I think e-commerce always shows up as a much more, higher margin channel, right? A more efficient channel. As you think about the costs of Reddit and the benefits, do you think they're both online and offline, or how do you think about that?
Reddit is really best for mostly online from what we've seen. Yeah, yet again, anybody can market on there, but is the cost of marketing worth the return on investment? If you live if you've got a brick and mortar in a small town somewhere in the US, you may have a subreddit with 20 people on it. That's going to be hard to market into. Your marketing dollars are more effectively spent elsewhere. We have a holding company client that owns the top 6 millennial mattress brand companies in the world. And yeah, their TAM is pretty large on Reddit, So juxtaposing those two in that way, it's not to say that the ones that are geolocated or brick and mortar can't win on there. I do know some big brands that are e-commerce and brick and mortar, but a non-geographically restricted TAM is super helpful.
And what separates a brand interaction on Reddit that feels authentic and valuable versus one that gets downvoted, ignored, or flagged immediately?
Yeah, let's inverse the problem, as Munger would always say. Like, what would you do if you were going to try to really fail on Reddit? You would make an account, and day one, with zero karma, you would go in and blast a bunch of tracking links everywhere. You would not even join the subreddit. You would just make a comment or a post. You would not follow the rules of each Reddit. You would ignore the ethos. So the brands that are winning on there, they're spending their time. They're taking both a branded strategy, which is like from an account that has their brand name on it, going in there. I call it the fairy godmother of the brand, being kind of friendly customer service if anybody mentions them or having a problem, sharing good information. And then also non-branded strategy. You can always ask your customers that are also users on Reddit, hey, if you already reviewed us on Google or on Shopify, why not on this platform as well, if you're comfortable telling your story? So those are the ones that are really doing well on the platform.
That's really interesting. And as you think about kind of best practices, is there a time of day to engage or post, right? Like what are some of the best practices that you've seen over time? And once again, as Reddit is evolving in terms of its importance to LLMs, do you see that those best practices changing?
Yeah, there's not really a time of day. It's a pretty international platform. Whereas LinkedIn, what I imagine being like almost entirely English speaking, Reddit does have like other subreddits that are entirely different languages. So kind of around the clock, 24/7. Staying consistent on the platform, always speaking from a consistent voice, consistently following the rules. Strategies like that are going to compound over time. And it's very similar to my own LinkedIn practice. I have a daily practice that's very manageable. I'm not trying to spend 8 hours a day on there. I'm trying to spend 30 minutes on there, but do that for a decade. Same thing with this, whether you're handling it as a founder or your social media person is handling it. Just don't try to do everything one day. Try to do a tiny bit every single day.
And going back to this idea that the brands can learn, right? It's not just kind of one way. For some of your clients, what have you seen that they've learned about themselves over time, and how is that kind of ultimately reflected itself either in product or practice?
Yeah, a lot of them are finding out about some, poor aspects of their product. Maybe it's a shoe foot bed, and they didn't know that, yeah, at 100 miles, the thing just explodes, or whatever it might be. A lot of them are finding good product feedback on there. And that might even happen before they're marketing on there. They're a big name company. They check out Reddit for once and they're like, oh, people are already talking about us. And some of them are saying some critical, but honest, hopefully, things about us. So that's how they're doing that.
And as you think about yourself, going back to whether it's, shoes, et cetera, do you find that you rely more on the brand, the community, right? What's your own kind of discover and, kind of benefit process?
Yeah, absolutely. For myself personally and professionally on there, it's a combination of joining subreddits I'm incredibly passionate about, ones that I am passionate about in business. I'm a top 1% contributor in small business. I just really love helping other business owners. So yet again, just going in there, answering questions, not being promotional, being helpful, joining that community. So it's kind of a blended approach. I do enjoy also just using it for personal use. My feed is 80% cat videos at this point, but it's great for business too.
What kind of cat?
Oh, I've got a Norwegian forest cat, so we like the fluffy ones.
So true. Being completely honest here, because I feel that's what this is about, is we have two aging dogs. So one's 12 and a half, one's 13 and a half. And we had a bit of a mouse problem in our co-op. And so I talked to the super and he's like, the best thing you can do is get a cat. And I'm like, that was just, I've always been highly allergic to cats. Both of our dogs are whatever, hypoallergenic. So I did a bunch of research, found the hypoallergenic cats, and we ended up with a Russian blue kitten that we rescued. I live in New York, that we rescued from Texas, from Lone Star Paws. And the whole journey, I mean, just getting the kitten and what the people who went through. So donate to Lone Star Paws because they're amazing. They drove up 50 animals and they had 13 stops. Their van, I mean, I'm like, I literally show up with like a bag of food for them because I think they had been through so much. But she was just, I mean, and she's born June 14th. So, getting close to being a year. It has been, I mean, first of all, she thinks she's a dog. And so
Yeah.
it's hilarious. She tries to lay in the dog beds with them and everything, but it's been I never knew that there was this like kind of cat fascination, but I was like, and every day, because she's going from like a kitten to a cat, it's been fascinating to watch. So I can understand the passion around cat videos and I'm like, understand, right? Because it's like nothing. I mean, I was like, I just didn't know that there were, and what's fascinating with her versus dogs is she engages with each of us completely differently, right? I mean, it's like the best social media strategy in the world, right? She understands who we are, what's important to us, and she leans into that. So it's been, as we totally digress, it's been fascinating. So if you think about your own behavior, has that changed since the beginning? And do you find, going back to your kind of 30-minute discipline on LinkedIn, how do you kind of keep yourself disciplined on the platform and able to, just, I guess, have the highest ROI?
From the beginning, like most users on the platform, I lurked for a few years before even making an account, because you can go on there and read it without making an account. You can't interact with it, but you can still read it. That's most people. If they don't create an account day one, most of us are just lurkers for a while. And then from there, kind of like how that has changed over time, I try to dive in more. I know how valuable I find other people's comments when I have a question. I was wondering about if I should change toe socks at mile 50 halfway through the race. And somebody was like, well, your calf's probably going to be cramping, so it's going to be impossible to put toe socks back on. So use regular socks for mile 51 through 100, But that's such a nuanced thing. And I found that stuff like that incredibly helpful for all these niches. So these days, I'm just trying to add more value to the platform, be more human. I like to say that our agency focuses on trying to make the platform better, not worse. And we're also trying to do a tiny bit of marketing too. But we want to leave it better than we came with it.
So before we get to the lightning round questions, maybe just tell us the name of your agency, how people can find you, and what you hope the rest of 26 looks like for you.
Yeah, our agency is Reddi, REDDI, REACH.com. You can find us going to the website. I'm also active on LinkedIn. Daniel P. Kirk is my handle, or Danny Kirk ReddiReach. Yeah, we serve about 45 different 7 to 9 figure e-commerce stores at any one time. We also serve some other businesses, some SaaS and services as well, but e-commerce has the biggest pain and the biggest opportunity right now. What I hope to see for the coming year, I hope to see more brands, and this is not a pitch for us, but more brands get involved on the platform. I truly do believe this was SEO 25 years ago. Everyone that was kicking themselves for not starting the compounding back then, I think that's today again. So we're super excited to help some of those companies get that snowball going, and I hope to see more brands doing it.
And I guess because, as a researcher, I ask questions all day long for a living. Do you think that companies can ultimately bring down their total marketing spend as they lean more into Reddit because of the higher ROI? Or how do you think, because I know how many dollars that they feel they're not able to measure the ROI? How does somebody think about their total marketing spend? And what does that look like after they start to work with Reddit?
I think that if they are doing both a paid approach and an organic approach, so paid is very kind of one-to-one, you pay X number of dollars and then you get a click, hopefully. So that's very one-to-one. But organic is a long-tailed strategy. You make one interaction and hopefully people see that for 30 more years, and it just compounds and compounds and gets scraped more by the LLMs. So I do think that if you're running both strategies, you will get a better ROI over time. And of course, if you're willing to play that long-term game as well.
That makes sense. All right. So we go into my favorite part of this, and you can pass. People do. So don't feel like you have to answer anything that you don't, but this is where it gets fun. Okay. Number 1, posts or comments?
Yeah, 99% comments. Posts, you want to be helpful on the platform. Posts are inherently promotional because you're just waving your hand and saying, look at me. Comments, you're helping other people. So always be helpful.
Number 2, most underrated Reddit tactic for brands?
Yeah, I would say probably asking your customers that are also super users of Reddit, and that is important. You don't want them to say, you want them to share their story, but you don't want them to go create an account with zero karma and then blast a link about your company. So the people that are customers, fans of your product, and also super users of Reddit, get them to tell their story on the platform. That's just free marketing.
Nice. Number 3, biggest Reddit mistake brands make in one sentence?
Going out too hard,
Nice.
too fast. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Number 4, one metric brands should watch more closely on Reddit.
Associated with Reddit, but post-sale survey, how'd you hear about us? Reddit being an answer. We recommend our clients don't use links in their content because people are link shy. Links can get deleted. That's not to say you can't use them, but if you believe in long-tailed strategies, you want the highest chance of it sticking forever. So the question is, how do you have attribution? Post-sale survey helps with that.
Nice. All right. Number 5, one type of content that consistently works.
Comments.
Perfect. All right. Number 6, one type of content that almost always fails.
Links or tracking links, certainly tracking links.
All right. Number 7, SEO or GEO, which are brands still underestimating more?
Got to be GEO because they're spending most of their money on SEO still currently. So I would imagine just in relative terms, GEO still.
Perfect. Number 8, is Reddit more valuable for customer acquisition or customer insight? It can be both.
I'm going to say both.
Okay, great. Number 9, one word to describe the future of search.
Wild.
That's awesome. All right. And number 10, what should every e-commerce CMO do tomorrow morning after hearing this conversation?
Yeah. If you're not a Reddit user already, just go in there, dive in, type your brand in. If you're a CMO, that means your company is probably pretty big. People are probably already talking about your company on Reddit. So dive in, search your name, or search on Google your brand name plus Reddit, and that'll bring it up a little more quickly. Just go in there and see what people are saying. I think the weirdest thing of all is LLMs being sycophantic will give answers about your brand, whether or not they are true. And we see this all the time. They just have wrong information about brands. They're recommending a brand, but they're like, oh no, the product's totally wrong. You got to find out what information it's sharing about your brand.
That's like the cliffhanger at the end. So we'll have to have you on again. I literally took like tons of notes. So I thought this was great. Danny, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for helping everybody think, if they haven't started, why they should start a Reddit journey and what they can do if they're already on the path. Thanks so much, and we look forward to having you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Deborah. And thank you for joining us this week. Coresight Research serves our members with time-sensitive research on consumer shopping behavior, retail technology innovation, financial outlooks for industry leaders, and trends across every retail vertical. We also facilitate leadership communities, conduct seminars and conferences, provide strategic consulting, and conduct technology assessments and develop proprietary data resources. Visit us at Coresight.com to learn about all the ways we can support your success. Have a wonderful week.